Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to a brand new video. My name is Arfad. Salam Ramadan, everyone. So this video has been requested by many of you, and finally the time has come, alhamdulillah, that I'm able to make this video. And this video is regarding the Islamic theological book recommendation. And so I'm here at my home office, and these are the books that I have every single day on my desk because I study them, I use them as references, and so forth. And so they are here, always easy to pick up, they're very handy. And so, first things first, the translation of the Quran that I use is the Clear Quran. I have here a physical copy, but I've used the online copies before in the past. And so this is the translation of the Quran. And when it comes to studying the word of the Quran, this is my go-to. This is from Darussalam, and this is Study the Noble Quran word for word. I've recommended this before in the past, and again, I stick to it. This is fantastic. So let me just show you a preview of what's inside. This is the first juice. This is the first 10 juice. It comes in 3 volumes. So this is volume 1. There's volume 2 and volume 3, and each volume contains 10 juice. And so one good thing about this is that it is color coded. And so if you actually refer here, what we have, if you refer to the first page, it actually gives you the what is it? I think it's here. It gives you what are different colors representing. So green indicates names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Black indicates nouns and pronouns. Magenta indicates verbs. Cyan indicates preposition and connecting words. And the orange indicates compound words. So this is a great resource, great for you to study the Quran. I've gone through this cover to cover for all the 3 volumes, which is why I stick to it. I completely recommend it, and this is always a great resource for you to have. And so next one is Tafsir. I have Tafsir ibn Kathir. This is the famous Tafsir. So Tafsir ibn Kathir, there are 10 volumes in this publication, and this is abridged by a group of scholars under the supervision of the late Safiur Rahman al-Mubarakpuri. Okay, and so this is a great tafsir. A lot of scholars recommend it, and so again, which is why I have it. And so we have the book of Hadith. Here we have the summarized Sahih Bukhari and the summarized Sahih Muslim. Okay, I do not have the other literatures, but I do have the compilations in Riyadh al-Salihin. So from here, you have compilations of the hadiths and a lot of the different books as well. For example, Ibn Majah and all other different books of the Sita, of the hadiths. And so I'll go through this Riyadh al-Salihin a bit later. But for those of you who do not have actually enough space at home, having a summarized hadith book, especially the 2 most famous book, Bukhari and Muslim, I think it is a must. It is a must for every household, for every Muslims who studies their religion must have at least either Bukhari or Muslim. Now, when I say must have, it can either be in a PDF form or it can either be in a physical book form. For me, I prefer physical book form because when I'm studying, I would have one of the tabs open on my computer and I can just and reference. I can just flip, for example, if I want to study book of Salah or book of Adhan. But this is the book of Adhan here from Bukhari. And so I can just find a few hadiths about this. Or if I want to turn to the book of wudu, for example, this is the book of wudu. So all the wudu rulings, all how the Prophet ﷺ performed wudu is all mentioned in this narration. And so, which is why it is actually fantastic to have. Sahih Muslim, it is in 2 volumes. It is much better. I prefer this smaller volumes compared to almost everything is falling off here. Okay, so almost compared to Bukhari, because if I want to take it somewhere, for me, for example, I used to take Sahih Bukhari, the summarized one, to the masjid, right, and it's really heavy. So it would be nice if you can actually, if you need to study in the masjid with your friends or whatever it is, then you can take, maybe just the topics that you want, or just the one volume that you want. But to some people, it doesn't really matter. And so Riyadus Salihin, okay, so this is also a great hadith literature to have. As Muslims, obviously, if you stick to the traditions of the Ahlus Sunnah, the traditions of the Sahaba, as to how the Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah SAW, understood the religion of Islam, then obviously you cannot reject the book of the hadiths. Okay? You can reject hadiths that are inauthentic, that are fabricated. You can reject that, but you cannot reject hadith that have been deemed to be authentic by the scholars. Authenticated by the scholars, for example, Bukhari, Muslim, right? Hadiths in Sunan Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, Musnad Imam Ahmad, so on and so forth. So you cannot reject all these hadiths. If you reject the hadiths, then you fall into what the scholars call the hadith rejectors, right? Because the hadiths is actually part of the hadiths actually explains the verses of the Quran, explains the religion of Islam, because these are the authentic sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. And so, for example, if you are just beginning to read hadiths, Riyadus Salihin is something that I would actually recommend, because it is actually a great source of knowledge for you without getting into the weeds, so to speak. Because there's topics, okay? There's a lot of topics, a lot of chapters, which actually, is essential for beginners. Okay? Essential even for people who are studying the deen, which is why the imams in the masjid, the ustads, they still, when they teach to the masses, they still use Riyadus Salihin. Okay? Because there are about 19 topics here, right? Across over 336 chapters. So, for example, the book of forgiveness. Okay, Allah is the most forgiving. So, if we go to the book of forgiveness, right, the final, there's only 2 hadiths in here, I think. So let's just read, since we are here. Okay. So the book, there's more than 2 hadiths. So Suhaib reported that Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, when the inhabitants of Jannah enter Jannah, okay, Allah the Glorious and Exalted will say to them, do you wish me to give you anything more? They will reply, have you not made our faces bright? Have you not brought us into Jannah and delivered us from hell? And Allah will remove the veil. The dwellers of Jannah will feel that they have not been awarded anything dearer to them than looking at their Rabb. Yeah? And so the greatest prize as Muslims is for us to actually look at our Maker, the one who actually created us. And so, which is why what we do in this dunya is very important. A lot of us engage in a lot of different comparative religious dialogues. We study the biblical texts, we study the Hindu texts, so on and so forth, all the other ancient religious texts as well. And so, but what makes the Islamic text so different? You have to just read it for yourself, and you for those of you who have been studying, for example, the Bible, right? And when you actually read the authentic traditions that we have, it is something that is completely unexplainable, right? But you will only you only understand what I'm talking about if you have actually dived deep into the scriptures of the Ahlul Kitab. Which is why I've made over 200 videos, and I've made a lot of videos before in the past. But at the end of the day, as Muslims, we should study our texts. We should study our texts more than the time we spend to study the religious texts of other religions. Okay. And so, the next important book is Minhaj al-Muslim. Okay. Minhaj al-Muslim, again, this is a all these books are concise. If you look at scholarly library tours, so to speak, they'll present you volumes and volumes and shelves upon shelves of book, for example, book on creeds, manners, characters, ibadah, and other deeds, right? But for people that are just an average Muslims, right, like myself, we are not an academic, so to speak, in that sense. Like, we are not scholars, and so we still have to entertain all these different subjects that we have in our so-called religious subjects, right? In Islam, for example. And so we still need to entertain, we still need to read books because it is important, especially Aqidah, Creed. Right? Aqidah is very important. There are people out there who claim themselves to be Muslims, but they do not believe in the angels. They do not believe in the jinn kind. They do not believe, or they do not understand, because they are ignorant, that in order for you to profess Islam in its entirety, in its completeness, you have to believe in the Malaika. You have to believe in the jinn kind. You have to believe in qada and qadar. You have to believe in the afterlife. You have to believe in all this. If not, how can you claim to be a Muslim? Because a Muslim is someone who submits themselves to Allah. And Allah has decreed, Allah has mentioned that in the angels. Okay, Jibril alayhi salam. Allah has mentioned all this. Shayateen. Allah has mentioned all these creatures of Allah in the Quran. And so there are still people out there who do not believe in Yawmul Qiyamah. For example, do not believe in the last day. Okay? And so Minhaj al-Muslim actually goes through all this and provide textual proof and also rational proof. Okay, so I turn to the very last page. Rational proof. Okay, for people who prefer their brain over the text. Okay? And so as Muslims, we should listen and obey. But there are people out there who listen, but they refuse to obey. They do not want to obey because they do not understand. And so, which is why important, reading is very important. And this is the very first ayah of the Quran. First word, Iqra, means read, recite. And so, it has been the tradition of the Muslims, Ummah, for 1400 years to actually read. And so I'm encouraging you, if you are watching this video, I am strongly encouraging you to read. I'm encouraging you to read. I'm not encouraging you to buy books. There's a difference there. Yeah? You can find resources. You can read online. Make sure it is from authentic sources, obviously. Right? And so Minhaj al-Muslim by Darussalam, again, a trusted publisher. And this book is by Abu Bakr Jabir al-Jazairi. Okay, and so next, while we are at the topic of Aqidah, we also need the book of Aqidah. For example, you have here the Sharh of Ibn Taymiyyah's Al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah. Okay, and this is, let me just remove the cover here. Okay, text on the fundamental belief of Islam and rejection of false concept of its opponents. Okay, false concept of its opponents. By Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, commentary by Dr. Muhammad Khalil Haras. Okay, and so this is very short commentary, right? If you want the original text is, it also contains a very short commentary as well. This is the original text, the Creed of Al-Wasitiyah, yeah, by Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, a textbook on Orthodox Sunni Creed. Okay, and so this is, may Allah bless my friend. He actually lended me this copy because I was asking for the original text of the Al-Wasitiyah, and so he lended me this, and I borrowed this from him. May Allah have mercy on him. But this is the Sharh, the commentary, the explanation. And this is a very short explanation. A longer explanation is by Sheikh, Sheikh, I would say, one of the best or one of the most knowledgeable scholars of recent times. Obviously, may Allah have mercy on his soul. And this is Al-Aqidatul Wasitiyah, a commentary by Sheikh Muhammad bin Saleh Al-Uthaymin. Okay, Sheikh Uthaymin. And so this is in 2 volumes. Okay, and this commentary, again, if you feel that reading 2 volumes like this, I'm telling you it's worth it. But if you feel that this is overwhelming, then you can read the concise one. Exactly. The Al-Aqidatul Wasitiyah, the text of Ibn Taymiyyah, is actually a fatwa of what you should believe. And so the original text started from page 41 onwards. Okay, the rest contains the introduction, which is not in the original the Creed of the Wasitian Creed. Okay, and we only know of the introduction a bit, and it is only possible for the introduction to have been written because of the trials that Sheikhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah actually went through because of him defending the Wasitian Creed. Okay, and so this is something that is very important, something that every Muslim should have, because Aqidah, which in English creed, a translation of it, is very important. And so if you do not focus on your Aqidah, you might not really believe what the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu actually believe. And if you do not actually believe what the companions of the Prophet actually believe, and the Prophet himself believe about the religion of Islam, then that's very dangerous. I'm not saying that you will go out of the fold of Islam, but because that depends on what you believe. For example, if you reject the existence of the angel, you reject outrightly, completely, and it has been proven that you are not ignorant, but you completely reject because you don't believe, because you have not seen it, then the same can be said. If you have not seen Allah Azza wa Jal, then why do you believe in Allah? Right? So if you are able to believe in one being that you've never seen before, then why can't you believe in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly made mention in the Quran? And so the book, the Sheikh go through all the different sects, like the Murji'ah, for example, all these different sects. The Aqidatul Wasitiyah is actually focusing on the Asma wa Sifat, okay, the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. It is not so much focusing on Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is the Tawheed of the oneness of Allah. Allah is one. Okay, and Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, also Tawheed of Ibadah, whereby only Ibadah is only towards Allah alone, with no other association in partners. And whosoever associate partners with Allah, Allah will have nothing to do with them, because they have committed shirk. Okay, they have committed a grave sin, which if they die upon that sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, Allah will never grant them forgiveness. Yeah, and so it is a grave sin to associate partners with Allah. So associating partners with Allah, the whole book, the whole focus actually discussed on Kitab al-Tawheed. Okay, and this is a great segue for me to go to Kitab al-Tawheed. Again, commentary by Sheikh Muhammad bin Saleh Ibn Uthaymin. Okay, and this time around, this is the commentary on Kitab al-Tawheed by what's the person's name? Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. Okay, commentary on Kitab al-Tawheed. And so this again in 2 volumes, published by Darussalam as well. I'll keep the 1 volume aside to show you the content. Okay, again the Sheikh goes through the commentary to show you the content of Tawheed. Let me just read to you Kitab al-Tawheed. Tawheed is very important. Okay, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, Tawheed in the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. Only Allah is worthy of worship alone. You cannot worship any other partners. You cannot worship any other thing. You cannot worship a tree. You cannot even make dua to a tree. You make dua to a dead person. Okay, which is why it is also called Tawheed al-Ibadah. which basically means singling out Allah with worship. As you can see, you're singling out Allah with worship. Okay, and so only Allah is worthy of worship. Allah is the Khaliq. He created the universe, and He is all hearing, all seeing. Okay, the noble, the wise, and He is also the oft forgiving. Okay, Ghafurur Rahim. So the most merciful. And so there's a lot of people out here. There's a lot of people out there actually that I've spoken to. Some of them that they actually give up. Okay, they actually give up because they feel that their sins have filled up the entire universe. Okay? But it is in our tradition, based on authentic sources, that even if our sins were to fill up the entire planets, even whatever it is, right? As long as we are still alive, it is never too late. All we need to do for all our sins to actually be forgiven by Allah, we just need to make tawbah. It's simple as that. No one needs to die for our sin. There's no need blood sacrifices. There's no need anything. All we need to do is just make tawbah. It is as simple as that. And the religion of Islam is actually very simple. You just need to focus, that obviously there are 5 things. You just need to focus on the most important thing, which is salah. And zakah, you can give zakah. Obviously you need to give charity, 2.5% of your wealth, those that you've kept and not used. But fasting on the month of Ramadan, obviously the shahadatain is important for you to internalize the shahadatain, right? The shahadatain includes all this, the tawheed of Allah. Okay, worthy of only Allah belongs, all worship, only all acts of worship, including dua, should be directed to Allah alone, with no partners in association. If you pray to a tree and you also pray to Allah, it is of no use for you to pray to Allah. All right, you should abandon your tree worship and then pray to Allah alone, because Allah created the tree. And so all these are proofs upon proofs upon proofs from the Quran. Okay? And if you actually reject this proof, this ayah of the Quran, then you need to really rethink your choices, because it is actually very dangerous for you to reject. For example, I was just speaking to a person about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so this person actually rejected the existence of the angel. But then I questioned this person, in my mind, in my heart, obviously, because I do not want to question this person further face to face, because out of wisdom, because some people you need to deal with carefully, especially when you are engaging in da'wah, because the more you actually attack their intellect, for example, so-called attack their intellect, they'll shy away from you. Right? So different people needs to be dealt with differently, but you need to deal with them with reason. As per Allah mentioned in the Quran, you need to reason with them, come to common terms with them. For example, you're dealing with the Christians and the Yahud. But this person that I was talking to, right, claims to be a Muslim. Right? But then this person outrightly says, I don't believe in the angel because I don't see the angels. And so that I was actually taken aback, because this person, we have never seen Allah Azza wa Jal. So if we have never seen Allah Azza wa Jal, we are able to believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. And the angels is also part of the unseen, the ghaib. So why can't we believe in the angel? Just because we can't see it, but we can't see Allah either. Right? So some people, you need to reason with them. You need to reason with their intellect and actually try to get them to think. But then again, it is Allah Azza wa Jalla who guides. There are a lot of people out there, when the proof has been presented in front of them, they will still continue to reject, because they worship themselves. Okay? Their nafs. It is all about their desires. They do not want to listen to the Quran in Arabic. Yeah, I tried to recite to the Quran in Arabic to this person quite some time back, and when I asked the question, do you want me to recite it in Arabic? Before I even finished the sentence, the person said, no, just in English. See, some people are afraid to hear the Quran because they know about the Quran. they know about the message of the Quran. And that is the kind of people that, for those of you who engage in dawah. And it's very sad, obviously. Ultimately, it is absolutely devastated to hear someone says that they don't believe in the angel, because this could actually take them out of the fold of Islam. Not that I'm making takfir, no. And may Allah guide them. We can only make dua, may Allah guide them. And we have to strongly make dua if we really care about the person. May Allah actually really guide them. But then again, Allah guides whom He wills. So our duty is to just to pass the message. This is our duty as Muslims, which is why we have all these books. We have all these books to actually support us. All these books are evidence-based, and it is being used. We should use and take full advantage of it, especially when we are giving dawah. Right? So these books are not written for a reason. These scholars do not spend their entire life producing these texts for no reason. It is so that the people like us must benefit from them. And the only way for us to benefit from them is to read and also to apply its teachings to our life first. Right? Then it is meaningful, because knowledge without application, as I remember Imam Ghazali mentioned, knowledge without application means nothing, right? And so speaking about Ghazali, I have two of his here: Condemnation of Pride and Self-Admiration, as well as The Beautiful Names of Allah. Okay, and this is from the Islamic Text Society, Cambridge. And I love their publication. I have other stuff from them as well. And I actually wanted to go through this Ramadan. I wanted to make videos about the 99 beautiful names of Allah Azza wa Jal, but you know, it's very difficult to find time this Ramadan. And so, inshallah, I will find the time and we can go through some of the beautiful names of Allah. Obviously, every name of Allah is beautiful. And we might even continue this series after Ramadan, inshallah. And so, two of Ghazali's, I would say, very important book when it comes to Islamic theology. Obviously, incoherence of the philosophers as well, but that has little to do with Islamic theology. I have a few other books here, which I'll just show you one of them from this small publication: The Purification of Tawheed from the Filth of Deviation. Again, this is a very short treatise, but a very strong treatise. Very strong treatise. Right. So, another one is, I've made 4 videos about this: the beliefs of the Sufis and Ahlus Sunnah when it comes to the pillars of Iman, the 6 pillars of Iman. Okay. And so, again, completely recommend. All these short treatises will actually help you a lot. So, while we are at the topic of Aqidah previously, I would like to present you one more book, and this is a concise presentation of the Creed of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah by Abdullah bin Abdul Hamid Al-Athari. This is by Dakwah Corner Bookstore, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. May Allah bless them all. May Allah bless all these public people who works in the publication, who have produced all these literatures, making them accessible to people like us. And so, again, this is a great book. It was actually recommended by my friend, may Allah bless him. I've not actually gone through this book yet, right? But from the content, a lot of the contents are quite similar to Aqidati Wasitiyah. Also have on Minhaj al-Muslim when it comes to the Creed. So this will be a great supplement. But just in case, I'll go through with you the content, definition of Creed, Aqidah, okay, and what is the Islamic Aqidah based on the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, obviously there are a lot of people out there who claims to be Muslim. Only Allah knows whether they are truly Muslims or not. But they do not believe in a lot of the Aqidah. They do not share the same Aqidah, I would say. Share the same Aqidah as the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Especially when it comes to the sifat, the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? For example, they reject that Allah has two hands. They reject that Allah has a face. They reject all this. So they abrogate, they apply some allegorical meanings, okay, to the text of the Quran. And so all these are very, very dangerous way, because the companions do not question. The companions do not question. The Prophet Muhammad do not actually elaborate on the verses. For example, like Allah has a face. It is not us to determine how Allah has a face. What does His face looks like? Na'udzubillah. Right? And so because Allah represents us the verse in the Quran, Surah Al-Ikhlas, chapter 112 of the Quran. Right? There's none like Allah. And so when Allah describes Himself having a face, having two hands, right, we should not attribute them to the human hands, the human face. If we were to do that, that means we have misunderstood the Quran. Right? We need to actually study the Quran again. But worse is still when Allah clearly mentions that He has two hands, He has a face, and then we reject it. Are we rejecting the Quran, ya ikhwan? Right? Are we rejecting? Well, people say if you read the book of Aqidah, you follow along the argument or whatever I'm talking about. Right? Some people take the cautious approach because they are so afraid of attributing human attributes to Allah, okay, which will consist of kufr. Right? If you attribute human attributes to Allah, you have committed kufr. Right? Basically, you have committed disbelief, because Allah doesn't share His attributes. Because of the verse of the Quran, there's none like Him. And so, but because some people, some groups, they are so afraid of accidentally attributing human attributes, for example, human hands and human face. Okay, because when Allah mentioned that He has a face, then since we have no reference point, we will say that, we might think that it is a human face, or we might be afraid that we might actually fall into associating human attributes to Allah. And so these groups of people, they say that the hands of Allah symbolizes power, because hands can also symbolize power. And so they use these different kinds of argument. So for example, when Allah has a face, it doesn't really mean that it is literal face. That's what the ayat doesn't mean, according to them. So it basically means that Allah is all-seeing, right? And so they kind of change the meaning of the text, of the nas. And so again, these are all discussed in the book of Aqidah as to why this is also something that is borderline very dangerous, because the companions doesn't interpret the verse that way. Ibn Abbas doesn't interpret the verse of the Quran that way. So why should people who come later on? Sorry, I was going to read you the content. So linguistic meaning of Aqidah, the predecessors, the definition of predecessors, the Salaf, the companions, the linguistic meaning of companions, linguistic meaning of Al-Sunnah, okay, and then we go through the attributes and distinctions of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, okay, the most comprehensive matter regarding the meaning of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And then so the first principle is Tawheed, belief in Allah alone to be worthy of worship, which is why we have Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed Asma wa Sifat, okay, which is the most discussed when it comes to the book of Aqidah, because of all the different denominations of the Sunni, when it comes to creed, Aqidah, they do not differ so much on the first two, okay, because they affirm that Allah is one, worthy of worship. If you don't affirm that to begin with, you're out. Okay? And so Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, only Allah deserves our worship. Okay? Tawheed al-Ibadah, for example. So a lot of groups, they actually do not differ within these first two. The only part that they differ the most is Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, meaning the attributes of Allah, okay, the names and attributes of Allah. And so the difference why there's a lot of the reason why there's a lot of differences in the beliefs when it comes to Asma wa Sifat is because the people do not actually understand the way the companions of the Prophet ﷺ actually understood the Quran. Again, language is also a problem, just like what the scholars have mentioned. But again, if you want to really know more and understand what are these different groups, it is actually mentioned at the back of Aqidatul Wasitiyah, okay, regarding the different groups. Okay, so for example, we have the Al-Ashairah, the Asharites. Hopefully you can see here. The Asharites. Al-Jabariyah, Al-Qadariyah, Al-Jahmiyah, Al-Mushabbihah, Al-Murji'ah, okay, Al-Haruriyah, Al-Hululiyah, Al-Rafidah, the Rafidah, the Shia, Al-Wa'idiyah, Kulabiyah, okay, Karaniyah, Nawasib, okay, Muwafidah, Mu'tazila, okay, those who prefer their brain, Zindik, the Majus, okay, the Khawarij. Okay, the Khawarij were the first one, then a lot of them actually came from the Khawarij, the Murji'ah, the so-called contemporary or modern day, or in recent times, Khawarij. Okay, a lot of these sects have actually died down. They have died down over the years, but again, in every era, in every century, there's always this deviant sort of groups, so to speak. Okay. Now, I'm not making takfir of them. I'm not saying that they are out of the fold of Islam. I'm not saying that. I'm not. Qualified to say, right? And of course, when these individuals are questioned as per their akidah, a lot of them will not admit that they are actually part of these groups of people, and so, which is important. So the study of Aqidah is very important, especially when it comes to the Asma wa Sifat of Allah. But obviously, as Muslims, the most important thing that we have above every other religion is Tawheed. So emphasize on the Tawheed. Tawheed is very important, right? Because Tawheed is actually the fundamental core of our religion, the Shahadatain, the negation of other gods, and the acceptance of only one God. Okay? Kitab al-Tawheed. There's a lot of Kitab al-Tawheed. You don't necessarily need to read the one from Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. You can read a lot of modern Kitab al-Tawheed. Okay, so we have the way of the Muslim, Minhaj al-Muslim, how Muslims live their lives, and so forth, how Muslims should believe, what Muslims should believe. Minhaj al-Muslim, basically, that's what this book is about. Then the book of Aqidah, very important, the creed of the Muslim, okay, Ahlus Sunnah wa Jama'ah, okay, the creed of the companions. And then obviously Kitab al-Tawheed, okay, the book of oneness, monotheism, obviously the creed here. And then we have the hadiths. Okay, if you are beginning, just refer to Riyadus Salihin, basically Riyadh from Saudi Arabia, right? So basically the collections of the pious person from this Riyadh area, Riyadus Salihin. So we also need book of fiqh, or what do you call it, Rukun. Okay, so we have Arkanul Islam, Fatwa Arkanul Islam, pillars of Islam, creed and prayer, zakat, fasting, and Hajj, pilgrimage. Okay. So this one is by Muhammad bin Uthaymin. As you can see, I'm a fan of his. May Allah have mercy on him and us, inshallah. And so this book is actually great. I read this to my family, and so it actually goes through what is the ruling on turning praise of the Prophet into a business. Okay, so all these other what is the ruling on describing the Prophet as Habibullah, the beloved of Allah. So all these rulings, there's also rulings on Aqidah, fatwa on Aqidah. Okay, for example, whoever believes that the Prophet ﷺ is a light from the light of Allah, and that he is not a human being, and that he knows the unseen, then he is a disbeliever, a kafir in Allah and his messenger. Okay, an enemy of Allah and his messenger ﷺ, he is not one of the awliya of Allah, the friends of Allah and his messenger, because these words of his belie Allah and his messenger, and whoever belie Allah and his messenger is a disbeliever, kafir. The proof that his words belie Allah is, say, O Muhammad ﷺ, I am only a man like you, and the words of him the Most High. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ The Prophet ﷺ is just a human being. And it so happened that this is out of this happens. Obviously, everything happens because of the will of Allah. It so happens I flipped this page, and then we have the common, especially where I'm from, whereby people believe that the Prophet is a light from the light of Allah, the Nur. Okay, the Nur from Allah. And so there, obviously, my area, people don't believe that the Prophet is not a human being. They believe that Prophet is a human being, and they also do not believe that the Prophet know the unseen. But there's a lot of beliefs whereby it is common, whereby they believe that the Prophet is actually a light from the light of Allah. Right? This is just like the logos of the Gospel of John. Okay, whereby the word of God becomes a separate entity, it manifests itself in a deity. How can words of someone be manifested and become a deity? Right? And so this is borderline kufr, right? To attribute that the light of Allah becomes the Prophet. So this is that obviously these people I've sat with them before, and they quote fabricated hadiths upon fabricated hadiths. And so when you ask them where you get this hadith from, they're not able to give you the references, because they basically heard from one person, telling it from another person, hearing it from another person, hearing it so on and so forth, and no one actually does the proof checking. Right? And when you ask them, for example, when you ask scholars like Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen or any scholars that you ask for references and evidence, they will give, because their books are filled with evidences and references, because that is the dalil, that is the proof text, that is why, that is the way, the traditions to go. But when you speak to a lot of these people who, they want to act out of their own desires, when you ask them for proof text, where do you get this from? Where do you get all these ideas from, that the Prophet is actually created from the Nur of Allah, or the Prophet know the unseen, so on and so forth? This is borderline kufr, if not even out of the fold of Islam, according to some people. I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm not making takfir. Again, I'm not qualified. And so we need to return to the Quran and the Sunnah. And we need to return to the religious texts. A lot of us today read fiction, non-fiction, book on history, so on and so forth. Okay, for me, I love the book of history. Okay, but the book of the religion always takes precedence over the book of history. Next, we have the book of fiqh. Okay, so we have the book of Tawheed, we have the book of Aqidah, we have the book of the way of the Muslims, how Muslims to live their life, not only based on their practices, but based also on what they utter from their tongue. Okay, because Iman is what you have in your heart, what is manifested in your tongue, and what is actually manifested into your actions. So for example, you believe in Allah, okay, you first must have firm belief in Allah in your heart, and then you believe in Allah by uttering it. Okay, La ilaha illallah. Yeah. And then you also must do the things that Allah commanded you to do. That is our religion, the religion of Islam. Again, if you look at scholarly library tours, you'll find that they have shelf upon shelf of the book on fiqh. But again, for my purposes here, what I need is basically just a concise presentation of fiqh. Right? And so this is from Islamic Publication House, IPH. Okay, may Allah reward them. So Islamic Publishing House, my mistake. International Islamic Publishing House. Okay, and so this have the, let me just share with you the content. Where is the content? Doesn't have the content, I see. Okay, so basically it speaks about how do you make wudu, how do you actually pray witir, okay, and so it has all regarding jurisprudence. Okay, what do you need to do? For example, if a dog licks your arm, okay, what do you need to do? For example, when you have no water to make wudu, when you have been intimate with your spouse and there's no water, and the water is cold, for example, the water is cold is actually here, the fatwa. what you should do if the water is cold but you've been intimate with your wife. Can you just do tayammum? Right, so all the fatwas are given there, and this is fiqh. Okay, and so these are kinds of the for example, like I've mentioned, when the dog licks you, what should you do? Okay, so we have your pilgrimage, we have the funeral prayer, Salatul Janazah, how do you pray the funeral prayers, and we also have a lot of the description of the prayer. Okay, and so these are all, again, these are more towards actions. Okay, how you should do, how do you pray the late night prayer, the tahajjud. Okay, what are the evidences, the number of rakats that you can pray. Okay, and so again, I will not read to you because you need to read it in context. If I will just read to you from different excerpts here and there, that is actually not a wise thing to do, because this is fiqh, right? And so you do need to go through, for example, marriage. Okay, what are the again, what are the teachings regarding marriage, so on and so forth. And so yeah, food, for example, what is halal and what is haram, for example, can you eat blood, so on and so forth. And so, for example, today Muslims, we eat steak, right? But a lot of us, if you look at what the kuffars does, is that they eat rare or medium rare. Can we eat rare or medium rare steak? Right? I'm not sure if that is actually in this book, by the way, but that is a question that I have, and the answer that I have for now is that because we cannot eat blood, so we have to eat food that have been cooked properly. Okay, but you can do your own research. Okay? And so again, actually this book is important. I should have mentioned it to begin with. This is the pillars of Islam and Iman. Okay, the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman. This is very important. Very important. And so if we don't have this, the pillars are foundation. A building without pillars will actually collapse. The foundation will be weak, and so a simple gust of wind blew and the whole thing collapsed. Just like our Aqidah, just like our religion, just like our beliefs. If we are not rooted upon the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman, anybody can influence us, front, back, left, right, center, top, bottom, 360 degrees. Will we pull here? Someday we feel like doing yoga. Someday we feel like living a Buddhist life. Someday we feel like we want to worship other gods. Someday we want to do this. Someday we want to do that. So there is no foundation. Where the wind blows, that's where we go, because we have no foundation. And so the pillars of Islam and Iman is something that we should internalize carefully, properly, and seriously, because this will prevent us from being pulled by the people from this side, from the people by this side. Obviously, it is all from the grace of Allah. Okay? But whosoever actually stand firm upon the religion of Islam, Allah will protect them. Okay? Whosoever stand firm upon the rightly guided Aqidah, Allah will protect them, because they take their religion seriously. They actually spend the time to study the religion, spend their hours learning about the religion, because they want to know about the religions, because they love their religion, because they know that the religion of Islam is actually the true religion, the divinely ordained religion. It is the first religion in the world, not Hinduism or not some kind of religion found in Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. No. Right? Islam is actually the only religion that has been ordained by God, and is the oldest religion. The Orientalists, or the people from the Western world, those people who have never researched about Islam, right, they will deny all sorts of things. They will say that the Quran has the same textual problems as the New Testament, as the Old Testament, so on and so forth. But they don't know what they're talking about. They're just saying this so that they do not have to actually study Islam, because they know that once they actually studied Islam, in all the chapters that we have gone through, the how do you live your life, what is your belief, one tenet of your belief, your tawheed, the most important, tawheed al-rububiyyah, and then you have your fiqh, you have your rukun, okay, your arkanul Islam, your guiding principle. And so it is always important, because let me tell you, this small book, this short book, okay, this short book, it is the most valuable book, I would say, in my collection, because this is actually Islam. Okay, belief in the pillars of Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam, is what you manifest in your heart and in your tongue. But when it comes to Iman, right, this is something that you also manifest in your actions. Right? And so if you look at the content, okay, Tawheed is something that you manifest in your heart. Okay? And then prayer is something that you actually do in action. Okay? Zakat is something that you do in action. Okay? Fasting is something that you actually do in action as well, and pilgrimage as well. Okay, and so obviously we have the morals and manners and mu'alamat, which is the transactions, mutual relations, and so forth. But the pillars of Islam and the pillars of Iman, they go hand in hand together, they interlock. Right? Because you cannot have the pillars of Islam and reject the pillars of Iman. And obviously if you have the pillars of Iman only, but you don't have the pillars of Islam, I mean, there's no point. You might as well join do something like the other religious people are doing, okay, which is not from Islam. And so all these are actions, because Islam is the religion of what you manifest in your heart, which is your firm belief. Aqidah basically means your firm belief. Okay, also can mean creed, but this is what you actually believe, because these are the creed that you hold on to. And this can also be considered creed as well, right? Tenets of faith, basically. And so this single book, if you only have to buy one book from the recommendations that I have here, and also recommendations of the past, this is the book that I would recommend you get. Actually, you can only get one book. This is the book that I would recommend you get, because this is Islam. Right? This actually teaches you about Islam. And if you are just starting out, you want to know what Islam is, this is Islam. Okay? You will know about Islam by just reading this book. And so, so behind here I have the book of history, the history of Islam. If you behind here is Al Tafsir Ibn Kathir in 10 volumes. And then we have here the history of Islam. Okay, the history of Islam. And so again, I have authentic sources, or I would say sources by Western academics as well as sources by Muslims as well. I mean, academic sources are also written by Muslims, but they are using Western academia, Western historiography. But this one is free from Western historiography. It accepts the Hadith literature, it accepts our narratives, for example, Ibn Ishaq, so on and so forth. And so, which a lot of the Western scholars actually cite and references, but they not necessarily accept. So there's a difference there. There's also a difference you need to know. By the way, this book is must, especially if you want to give da'wah. Okay? Because a lot of times we actually ended up making fun of the people than actually trying to teach the people. Okay, but again, Allah is the one who, may Allah guide us. The other two here, I have two riwayat of the Quran, okay, two different qira'at. This one is Qalun by riwayat Qalun by Imam Nafi, right? So this one is Warsh, again by Nafi, okay, Warsh, riwayat Warsh. And so again, this is part of the qira'at of this is 2 of the 10 qira'at of the Quran. I've not made videos about Qiraat before, because there's a lot of other videos that, you know, make them better than me than I could ever make. Okay, but for those of you who wants to know, this is actually the Warsh Quran by Nafi. Right. So you have here all the different things. Well, this is by Darus. I can't remember what publication this is. But so what is the difference between the Hafs and Asim that we have, for example, in the Quran, for example, the Medina Quran here. Okay, the Medina Quran. This is the normal standard Quran that a lot of people use. Okay, so this is the Mus'haf. Okay. And so this is one Qiraat, and then we have two others here. Okay, but majority of them are the same. So why is there a difference in the wording there? Okay, and so because this is the thing that a lot of the people from the Ahlul Kitab, the people that actually researchers about Islam, they attack the religion of Islam from this angle. And so when we do not actually study the traditions of the Quran, we actually fall prey, because they can basically do what we did to them, whereby they go to this verse, okay, and then point to, for example, Qiraat Warsh, and then they say, look, there's a textual variance here, right? There's a textual variance here. And they point to another verse, look, there's a textual variance there, right? So whatever the Quran, whatever that you accused the Christians of, why they have thousands of textual variants, they also did the same, where they show that, oh, this is also textual variance. And so for those who have not actually studied, they will realize that, hold on a second, you know, the Quran narratives have holes. This is what has been mentioned. I will not mention the person who mentioned this, but if you know, you know. And so, but this is something that is, I would even say, borderline, I don't want to use the word because I'm fasting, but this is borderline, you know, silly even to say, right? Because it is not the same kind of tradition. If only they knew, it is not the same kind of tradition. The Quranic tradition that we have and the tradition of the New Testament is not the same. You just have to study it. It is not the same. How is it not the same? Okay. First of all, the earliest manuscripts that we have for the New Testament, the complete, okay, comes 350 years after Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, after Jesus. 350 years after Jesus. Okay. Whereas the skeletal text that we have from the Quran, within 85 to 100 years after the passing of Rasulullah. And from that skeletal text, we have all the different Qiraats, Hafs and Qiraats. We have all the different, I would call textual tradition. Right? And it all stems from one of the Quran, the Uthmanic read, the Uthmanic script, the skeletal text. Whereas the difference between the New Testament is that you have writings that appears here, writings that appears here, writings that they call it the Alexandrian, even though scholars modern day no longer go by this, because they go by the CGBM method, coherent based genealogical method, right? But if you look at Masker's work, we have Alexandrian text, we have the Asia Minor text, we have the text from different places, different areas. Obviously, these are not geographical locations when it's being used. These are basically attributions, not based on geographical locations, but based on the readings, so to speak. The readings that are Alexandrian, okay, they are found because the Alexandrian manuscripts, so-called, okay, they are grouped together and they cater more towards the Alexandrian reading or the Western reading, okay, the Byzantine reading, so on and so forth. And then we have the Caesarean reading for a period of time in the 1960s, but then this has been dismantled by Mascus. Actually, dismantled by Mascus in 1960. But when it comes to the Qira'ah of the Quran, it all comes from a single Mus'haf. it all comes from a single dialect. You can recite all these Hafs and Asim, you can recite Warsh Nafi, Wash and Nafi, Qalun and Nafi. It all comes from the same skeletal text. And as per the hadiths of Rasulullah, hadith Jibril, the Quran has been revealed in 7 different modes. Okay, even though modes is not the right translation, but 7 different qira'at, ahrufs and qira'at. And so it is actually ordained by the Prophet and by Allah, okay, through Jibril alayhi salam, whereby the Quran has all these different qira'ats. And so it is not the same tradition. And so do not be fooled by them when they point out to you, look, if you refer to here, look, this is the reading that is different from your normal standard Medinan Mushaf. Look, this is different, this is different, this is different. They point out to you, look, you have all these differences, all these different readings. Look, every single page. Okay? Look, they even write it differently, so on and so forth. All this, if you actually do not know your own tradition of Islam, you do not know your own religious text, you do not actually know your own textual tradition, then it is you to blame when you're not able to respond to the people that actually want to cause shubhat in your heart, to cause doubt, cause you to doubt. And so, like Sheikh bin Uthaymeen mentioned, okay, the best weapon that a Muslim has is actually to arm themselves with knowledge, so that when they meet people of innovations, people who actually want to cause shubhat, cause doubt, you are able to answer them and shut them out, so to speak, right? And then you can even counter them. Look, this is your tradition. Your tradition have all these different manuscripts, right? And so our tradition have all these different manuscripts, but they're not the same tradition, because ours comes from a single stem, but yours comes from multiple stems. So which one is which? Ours is divinely ordained, but also by Allah Azza wa Jal through Jibril alayhi salam, through the blessed lips of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yours is, who is the author? Which tradition this comes from? Where are the sources? Where are the references? You know, for 300 years, you have all these different manuscripts before you have Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. You know, whereas we have the Uthmanic Rite within 15 years during the reign of Uthman ibn Affan. And from there, the Ahrufs and the Qira'at actually came from, because all this leads to the same single source. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the best knowledge is the knowledge of your deen, and you need to be able to defend your deen, because if you're not able to defend your deen, then you need to learn how to defend your deen, and also always engage with people through reasoning. And the reason why I enjoy comparative religion, the study of comparative religion, is because before the person even asks you the question, you already know where they're coming from, because you know their religion, you know their traditions inside out, so to speak, right? And you know the points that they're going to raise to you, and you know that where they are going with the points that they raise to you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we should learn our religion. I emphasize, and I even strongly encourage you to refer to books. And so I have to go. It is time for iftar. Hopefully this benefits you, Ikhwan Muslimin. And so I'll see you in my next video. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.